Hey, welcome back. Sorry we are not Tiago, but we're Joe Brown and James Bake with top 4 action at the Liberty Garden Spring Midseason Showdown at the only game in town. Trista Medine and Steven Mia. Steven, not just on that World's qualification grind, but he's actually on that day 2 grind. So he wants to win the midseason here today to keep up with the rest of the North American talent. And he told me earlier he is intending on going to Brazil later on this month, and of course the North American International Championships. So just a little bit of confidence if he wins this match in top 4 in the finals is what he's going for. And of course Trista, World's qualified player. Obviously, she actually, in our round 5 match, had her match with Jake Skirchak. I won't spoil what happens to that in that match since both Jake and Trista won, so I don't want to tell you who won or lost. You're going to have to check it out on our YouTube channel when we upload that. So let's get into this action. Obviously, you play against Trista and Steven all the time in Top Cut, right?
Well, yes, they are quite strong opponents to face, so this should be an interesting match. I believe they played each other a few times. I'm not sure if they played each other in this format. However, it should still be a good match regardless.
Yeah, so I know Trista, from her match earlier, did have multiple Mega Pokemon to choose from. So she has the option where we saw Chris Danzo in top 8. Chose not to bring his Latias, his only Mega option in both games. Trista's going to make up for that by being able to choose the pick of her litter of whichever Mega she wants to go for in this matchup. Of course, it is best of 3, so maybe if her first Mega she chooses isn't working out for her, she can always switch it up, and that is some of the benefit of running a dual Mega team.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I believe both Mega Evolutions actually do pretty well against Steven's team. So it's going to be interesting to see what Trista chooses to bring against Steven. Might try to choose one of her Megas just to see how it works. And if it doesn't work, she always has that backup option, as you did say. So it should be pretty interesting. Yeah, this match is going to be pretty fun.
I think it's going to be fun. Obviously, 2 of our top premier players here in the New York, New Jersey region, they are finding each other in game, having a quick chat. One of those Pokemon that Steven loves is Tapu Lele. It's on many of his teams at a lot of his regionals or mid-seasons or international teams. He just loves Tapu Lele, and he's bringing it again today.
Actually, no, he's not. He's bringing the pseudo, I guess, the Mega Gardevoir instead of Tapu Lele.
Totally had the wrong person in my head. I apologize. Thank you. Trista has the Tapu Lele. I read the papers wrong. I'm a little dazed right now. I apologize. I am absolutely excited. So Trista's team with Metagross, Charizard, Tapu Koko, Landorus, Snorlax, and there's the Tapu Lele. As Steven with Gardevoir, Tapu Fini, Zapdos, Incineroar, Aegislash, and Landorus. So a Gardevoir here.
Yeah, so Mega Gardevoir has been picking up quite a bit of popularity recently, been able to win the latest regional here in North America. Should be pretty interesting to see. These 6 are no surprise factor to anyone who's played VGC. It's pretty common on Battle Spot, Showdown, and in tournaments, so should be pretty interesting to see. But what's the matchup? How are we going to see Steven adjust to this matchup? Because Charizard Y and Metagross are both Pokemon that Gardevoir does not like to face off. So probably has to bring Incineroar and Aegislash, I would assume. And probably has to bring like Landis variant to deal with the Charizard if Trista does choose to bring Charizard.
I know there's that common nickname of Gardevoir going around with Mega Gardevoir and Incineroar. It definitely helped it become more viable. Really, we first saw a lot of success with the Mega Gardevoir after Incineroar came out with its Intimidate ability. But Gardevoir does have to be wary because both Mega Metagross with a super effective Iron Head and then the Hyper Voices aren't going to do a lot because Charizard resists, so either one of Trista's Mega Pokemon here are really going to help her out against the Gardevoir. So it actually comes down to whatever the other 3 Pokemon that Steven is going to bring in this match will help out. He's going to need the answers from them for Trista's Pokemon. As right now, Steven leading on the top of your screen with the Zapdos Incineroar, as Trista has Landorus and Charizard.
Yeah, so both Pokemon going to get intimidated onto each other's side, going to affect the physical attackers. And Steven does have Fake Out Pressure and does have Tailwind options. However, the question is, what does Trista have? Because depends on the Zapdos set, I believe, because one, if Trista's running Overheat on Charizard, could potentially knock out the Zapdos depending on the spread, and that could be really bad for Steven overall. However, if Steven has something like an Electrium on the Zapdos, could knock out the Charizard, so maybe wants to scout out each other's sets, maybe some defensive switching, or maybe just wants to try and go aggressive and see if it doesn't work game 1, learn and adjust in game 2.
And I do appreciate Steven's name for Zapdos being not Coco, because that is factually accurate. Zapdos is not Tapu Koko. It's still an electric and still does often hold the Gigavolt Havoc option, which obviously super effective onto Trista's Charizard. And Trista, knowing that information, will switch out her Charizard into Tapu Lele, which will activate its Psychic Surge ability, bringing Psychic Terrain on the field. No priority moves for grounded Pokemon, which is exactly what happens as a Fake Out goes into that Lander slot, not able to activate thanks to Psychic Terrain. A Rock Slide, super effective on both of Steven's Pokemon, and Zapdos actually flinches, so if it went for Gigavolt Havoc or Tailwind or any option, Steven not able to land it.
Yeah, missed opportunity from Steven. That Rock Slide flinch is very unfortunate. We do confirm that the Landers is faster than the Zapdos, which is going to be pretty big. Might be a bulky variant of the Zapdos, or it could be a Choice Scarf on Landers. Both players probably don't know yet, but now Trista's threatening a Shattered Psyche potentially into Zapdos, but we're going to see the switch out from Incineroar right here.
Yep, Steven bringing in Tapu Fini into that slot, saying Steven very knowledgeable of how much damage Tapu Lele can do in Psychic Terrain, so wants to get that Misty Seed off, 1, to lower its damage, and 2, to activate Zapdos' Misty Seed, which will increase its special defense by 1 stage. And Trista, using the power of her mind with Tapu Lele, a Shattered Psyche into either of Steven's targets here.
Yeah, it's probably going to go out into the Zapdos slot, I imagine. You don't Shattered Psyche and Incineroar most likely, but good target down to Zapdos. It's not going to probably pick up the KO because of the losing the Psychic Terrain plus the Misty Seed boost on Zapdos, but does put it in range of potential Rock Slide. But we're going to see Knockoff instead into Tapu Fini, getting rid of a Wiki Berry.
Yeah, Wiki Berry, Steven not able to later on recover half of its HP, at least here in game 1, and this time Zapdos is finally able to activate its set up Tailwind, so now Steven's side of the field will be faster for the next 3 turns.
Yeah, and if the Zapdos carries Roost, because they tend to carry Roost on a Misty Seed variant, Steven can negate the damage that Trista has, and especially that Z move that was so important earlier, can avoid taking a Rock Slide. Trista might be able to catch the Zapdos though if she does predict that Roost could go for an Earthquake right here, maybe like protect or switch out to Charizard if she really wants to. However, that would be a really aggressive play. She might try to adjust her board positioning by switching out, or go on the offense, or if she has Protect, she could go for Protect to stall out the Tailwind here.
And Zapdos will actually go for a Roost here, so is going to lose its Flying type and recover half of its HP. A Muddy Water avoids the Tapu Lele, but does hit Landorus. It is super effective, but it is a spread attack, so doesn't even bring Landorus down to half, as Tapu Lele, not another Psychic, actually a Taunt this turn. So now Zapdos cannot go for any non-attacking moves until it switches out or the Taunt wears off, as Landorus with another Rock Slide. And actually, if we remember, Trista went Rock Slide, knockoff Rock Slide, so it is not a Choice Scarf variant of Landorus. That Steven now knows that information.
Yeah, so Steven's going to be forced to attack here. Maybe a Thunderbolt into the top of the ladder. Might just try to go for a Heat Wave, for instance, just for damage. Steven is still in a pretty good position. Still can just draw off Muddy Waters, and the Muddy Water Heat Wave will be able to knock out the Landers most likely. So Trista's Landers is threatened here, and most likely will be carrying that Assault Vest because the Muddy Water didn't do too much damage. So the Landers slot is threatened. Maybe Trista will retreat the Landers to save the Intimidate for later if she has a Pokemon like Snorlax in the back, and switch into Snorlax to eat up these attacks, because Snorlax will be able to wall both the Tapu Fini and the Zapdos. And of course, Steven could go for a Calm Mind if he chooses to.
Since Zapdos was taunted, Steven deciding he wants to switch out his Zapdos to bring it back in later to go for a Tailwind or any other attacks or a Roost. But as of right now, it couldn't since it was taunted. Steven will bring in his Landers, intimidating Trista's Pokemon, but too late, as Trista will also switch out her Landorus. In comes Tapu Koko, so 3 out of the 4 Tapus are on the field. Sorry, Bulu, your invitation was lost in the mail, as Landorus takes up that 4th slot. And a Dazzling Gleam from Trista, so a spread fairy attack, not as strong as a single target Moonblast would have been onto Steven's Pokemon.
Yeah, that's super unfortunate. Missing 2 Muddy Waters onto Tapu Lele and missing the damage onto Tapu Koko. That's absolutely huge here, because the fact is, even if Landorus switches in for Trista to get intimidated off onto Steven's Landorus, the Earthquake won't be able to knock out because of the fact that those Muddy Waters miss. So that damage is really important here, and Trista's going to be able to capitalize. Maybe he can go for a double protect this turn and stall out that last turn Tailwind, and this is pretty bad position for Steven right here.
Yeah, he can go for, always has the options at a critical hit. Of course, Steven could switch in the Zapdos into the Tapu Fini slot, so it does. Landorus does have a free free teammate next to it that it can Earthquake. But Trista, expecting a potential Earthquake, obviously, since Tapu Koko is weak to the ground type attacks, will switch in. Landorus is immune and gets an Intimidate off, which this Stone Edge at -1 into Landorus is not going to do a lot. But Muddy Water connecting finally onto both of Trista's Pokemon knocks out Landorus, so it's not going to be able to go for Rock Slides or anything else here in Game 1. And a Dazzling Gleam, no accuracy drop, so this will hit both of Steven's Pokemon, bringing the Tapu Fini down to around 30-ish%. Of course, it had its Berry knocked off earlier and brings Landorus to at pretty much half of its HP.
Yeah, so Stone Edge is interesting on Landorus. That means that if Steven does get a Stone Edge off onto Charizard, even at -1 after an Intimidate, it would be able to knock out the Charizard Y. So that's a huge move to know in this matchup. You can't really switch in Zard very safely here, but Zard's going to come out and most likely going to be faster than both of these Pokemon, so it can just throw off maybe a Heat Wave, or if Trista wants to, could protect here, just go for another Dazzling Gleam, get that damage off to guarantee Landorus being knocked out by the Heat Wave the following turn. There's a lot of options for Trista here, and Steven might want to sack the Tapu Fini here in order to get a free switch in. It is unfortunate that the Zapdos has lost a Misty Seed boost though, so won't be able to take Heat Waves or Psychics or Gleams that well.
And Tapu Fini really has not fulfilled its job to its maximum potential by missing 2 Muddy Waters on the Tapu Lele. That Lele is still very high in HP, so if it took 2 more Muddy Waters, maybe it had an accuracy drop, maybe it would bring it down to around 30-ish, 35% of its HP. But instead, that Koko, or Trista's Koko, switching in to the Lele slot. Mega Charizard will Mega Evolve. So the Heat Wave in the sun is enough to knock out Tapu Fini, but does not bring down Landorus, as a Stone Edge connecting with Charizard. 4 times super effective critical hit did not matter in the slightest there, as Charizard is knocked out from full HP.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge here, as Trista's going to be forced to bring in the Tapu Lele. Steven is going to be forced to bring out either the Incineroar or the Zapdos in the back. Incineroar is looking pretty good here, especially if it's carrying an Assault Vest or if it's just a bulky berry variant, because of the fact that it will be able to take these hits, and the fact that Psychic Terrain is going to be up, so Tapu Koko is not going to be doing as much damage, and Psychic is not really going to affect the Incineroar, so it should be pretty interesting here to see, as Intimidate is going to drop on these Pokemon, but doesn't really matter. Most of them tend to be special attackers. But right here, the question is, how does Trista threaten the Incineroar? And Steven is threatening a knockout because of the Sun from Trista's own Charizard. Flare Blitz is probably going to be able to pick up a knockout onto either Tapu Lele or the Tapu Koko.
Right, and the Incineroar, Trista doesn't have to worry about a fake out, so she is free with the Tapu Lele and Tapu Koko most likely being faster, obviously, than Steven's Pokemon. They both have access to Dazzling Gleam, so Trista can even go for a simple double Dazzling Gleam on this turn and certainly knock out Landorus and get the Incineroar very low on its HP. Tapu Koko will have the Dazzling Gleam on this turn and a single target Dazzling Gleam here for Lele, bringing Incineroar down to under 25% of its HP, which is just enough for Steven to activate its Figgy Berry and recover half of its HP. As a Flare Blitz, with the Sun Boost, actually going to do even more. Tapu Lele getting knocked out there, and of course Incineroar will take a little bit of recoil damage there, but absolutely a trade Steven is willing to make, considering it got rid of Trista's strong attacker in the Tapu Lele, as Steven will bring back his Tapu Koko. Not Koko against Koko.
Yeah, so very nice play. Steven knew that the Lele was a threat because Lele was going to be able to threaten a knockout onto that Zapdos with Psychic, but it looks like Tapu Koko wouldn't have enough firepower to knock out either one of these Pokemon with Thunderbolt.
Yeah, and no electric terrain really making a difference here for Steven as Incineroar was able to eat the Thunderbolt. A Roost from Zapdos brings it back to full HP, and a Flare Blitz in the sun. Incineroar saying thank you to Trista Charizard for setting up the sun for it to boost its Flare Blitz, its raw power, knocking itself out, but Zapdos is still on the field. Steven will win Game 1 here in top 4.
Yeah, so very impressive play, especially since Steven did get pretty unlucky early on, missing a bunch of Muddy Waters, and that damage would have been absolutely huge, as I said before, because of like Landorus, or didn't have to rely on Sun in order to get the Flare Blitz knockout. So that was pretty huge there, and very nicely played from Steven. Was able to get that Tailwind option, and Trista didn't exactly have any speed control, and that's where it was absolutely huge. Steven was just able to put on a lot of pressure, and it's interesting to see that Trista just went on the offense. She didn't really protect at all to stall out potential Tailwind turns. Might confirm something about the sets on the Pokemon, but definitely interesting to see there.
And it really shows the mark of a great trainer with Steven by not going on tilt after missing consecutive Muddy Waters, understanding what his goal was with his team in Game 1, even being in rough spots where he was down in Pokemon or it looked like a precarious situation that it was not likely for him to come back. The help from Incineroar having the Figgy Berry instead of Assault Vest, recovering all that HP that it could then lose in recoil from Flare Blitz, was enough and imperative for Steven to win Game 1.
So, for adjustment-wise, do you think Trista would bring the Metagross this time, or do you think she would stick with Charizard?
I think Charizard works as long as it doesn't get hit by a Stone Edge. I think that's the number one rule for Trista right now, is to avoid Stone Edge at all costs from Landorus. The Metagross is really threatened a lot more from Incineroar than Charizard is, since it can be hit with a Flare Blitz or a Dark-type attack from the Incineroar. So I think Charizard is the answer for Mega Pokemon right now. It's just about how you use it, especially since Steven has an Aegislash on the field. So, Trista Medine on the bottom of your screen. Hell, that actually rhymed. I wasn't even trying. Tapu Koko and Charizard as Steven Mia on the top of your screen with the Incineroar and Aegislash.
Yeah, pretty useless Intimidate, going to go off onto these special attackers, but going to be interesting. Steven does have that fake out pressure, can go for a fake out, and even if Trista switches out into Lele, Charizard will still be faked out due to its immune to terrain effects. So interesting. Steven might be able to set up with Aegislash if it carries something like Substitute, or could go for a Never-Ending Nightmare if Steven predicts that Trista will not protect here. Although I think Trista should be protecting at least one Pokemon here just to avoid a potential Never-Ending Nightmare, but might anticipate the Aegislash to go for a Substitute and might try to go offensive, but Steven could capitalize off that.
This is a big turn 1, as we see in a lot of matches between high-level trainers. It could really set up how the rest of the course of Game 2 can go. If Trista goes for a double protect, plays it safe, and then Steven loses his Z move for 25% of its potential damage, that would put her in a great spot. If she goes aggressive and then eats a Z move, eats a Never-Ending Nightmare, she could potentially regret that. So let's see how Trista and Steven handle turn 1. Landorus will switch into the Charizard slot, intimidating Incineroar and Aegislash, but Incineroar actually just switching out, no fake out, no threat of a U-turn if it was running that. Steven bringing his own Landorus in, which puts Trista's Landorus at the losing end of this battle, considering it is now -1 and Steven's Landorus is neutral in its attack. And Tapu Koko will activate its Z move before Steven has a chance of showing off its Never-Ending Nightmare. And here is the Gigavolt Havoc, but it's ineffective because it goes into that Landorus switching. So excellent call from Steven. And he says, oh, you want to use your Z move? This is how you use the Z move, a Never-Ending Nightmare, and it's not going to be ineffective or immune.
Yeah, so absolutely huge turn from Steven. I think Steven anticipated the Gigavolt Havoc, was scouting out for it because of the fact that Trista, the Incineroar in the last game, was putting on so much pressure and she couldn't really damage it, especially since she lost Landers early on. Neverny Nightmare going to punish the Landers coming in, so that's going to do a lot of damage, but Whiff looks like an Assault Vest from Trista's Landers going to be able to take that attack, and that's absolutely huge damage onto the Landers, which is one of the Pokemon that's stopping Steven's Incineroar from doing much damage, because that's pretty much the only switch-in she really has. Nothing really wants to take a Flare Blitz on her team, so absolutely huge to weaken the Landers right here. Any attack basically from these Pokemon will be able to knock out the Landers, and Steven's in a fantastic position right now.
And it's such a great feeling. Not like it was the craziest prediction in the world, but since he didn't have his Landers on the field, Steven going for that call, saying Gigavolt Havoc is coming into this slot. I'm going to bring my ground type in. Obviously, not the greatest prediction ever, but it's still such a strong feeling knowing like I have control in this match. I'm kind of in my opponent's head right now. I'm figuring out what type of options they want to go for. So Steven has to be feeling great at this moment, as Tapu Lele will switch in for Trista, and Tapu Koko will protect, so no attacks from Trista on this turn, and a Stone Edge connecting on Tapu Lele, bringing it actually down to under half of its HP. Steven, no King Shield, staying in Blame form, and a Shadow Ball goes into Tapu Koko's protect.
Yeah, not bad damage onto Tapu Lele. Both Pokemon are going to be in range of Earthquake, and Steven's actually in a fantastic position because Trista wasted the Z move on the Tapu Koko, can no longer go for Shattered Psyche to knock out the Landers. We do know that Steven's Landers is most likely Assault Vest, and will be able to survive any double up from this Tapu Koko and Tapu Lele. Trista might have to play a bit more defensively, but that allows Aegislash to maybe capitalize off, get a Shadow Ball, and maybe the Landers chooses not to go for a Earthquake here, might decide to retreat here to preserve Intimidate for later, or might just throw off a Stone Edge just for some damage.
Trista will switch out Tapu Koko into Landorus, so that will intimidate both of Steven's Pokemon. Does Steven understand and assume Trista would bring in Landorus on this turn and switch out his Landorus of his own? But no, actually both of Steven's Pokemon staying in. A King Shield from the Aegislash, which is essentially Protect, probably shows the sign that Steven went for an Earthquake. Here is a Psychic boosted by Psychic Terrain, only doing half of that Assault Vested Landorus's damage, or HP, I should say. And here is the Earthquake, only targeting Tapu Lele. Intimidate, that was critical for Trista to survive. Hardly any HP remaining on her Lele.
Yeah, and this is absolutely huge. I don't think Trista would have minded if Lele went down. Might have been able to get a free switch into Charizard, for instance, to draw off Heat Waves. But now, the Lele is safe, but can go for maybe a Psychic. Will outspeed the Aegislash plus the Landorus variant. So that's not too bad for Trista. So what will Trista do? Because if she loses Landorus, again, not going to have much damage output against the Incineroar. So maybe might want to conserve Landorus, go back into Koko. But the problem is if you go back into Koko, you're not going to have the Psychic Terrain and won't be able to knock out Landorus.
Right. And if you just keep switching out your Landorus, you find yourself in a position or a spot of always trying to gain better position and never actually pressuring your opponent and doing any damage. So Trista does not switch out in the conventional sense, but will actually go back to the end with a U-turn into that Zapdos, which actually just switched in for Steven here. And as we wait for Trista to choose a Pokemon, we want to let you know that Paul Chua has beaten Patrick Donegan in the other top 4 match. So our winner between Trista and Steven will face Paul Chua in the finals of the Midseason Showdown. Trista chose Charizard as her Pokemon to come into that Landorus slot, and for its efforts will eat a Shadow Ball, bringing it down to around almost in the red, but not enough, maybe 30% of its HP. And you still have that very low HP Tapu Lele and a now pretty close to low HP Charizard.
Yeah, but what's pretty big here is we see that there's a Zapdos, but no Tapu Fini, so no Misty Seed will be procced in this battle here. And since both of these Pokemon will outspeed the Zapdos and the Aegislash, Trista could potentially get a double knockout of Heat Wave or Psychic. And even then, like, even if she doesn't get a double knockout, she's going to pressure with a lot of damage right here. So it's going to be interesting to see what Steven decides. Probably has to trade a Pokemon right here in order to get himself into a different position. Maybe try to get the Incineroar in for free, for instance, but good hard switch out Zapdos into the Incineroar.
Yeah, Incineroar will take a Psychic. Obviously, it's immune to Psychic, and then we'll take a Heat Wave from Charizard because it's resisted being a Fire-type Pokemon. So Intimidate really not the effort or the purpose of bringing Incineroar here on this turn. Steven is kind of baiting Trista, saying, please target my Incineroar here. That would really help me out, as Charizard will Mega Evolve, activating its Drought ability, which will bring the sun out, making fire type attacks do more damage. Aegis Slash with a King's Shield, returning to its shield form, so it's not going to take any damage from an impending heat wave coming its way. But no, actually an overheat into that Incineroar slot. That does a lot of damage, being ineffective. That's really the power of that harsh sunlight. And a taunt from Tapu Lele. This Tapu Lele has no HP and is not afraid. It is not worried about being attacked. Yeah, how many? It's been, I think 3 turns now that it's been so low on HP, and it gets a taunt off onto Aegis Slash. So now it either has to switch out, or once it changes to blade form, it is not able for a couple of turns to switch back to the to the shield form.
Yeah, and Overheat is threatening to knock out onto the Aegis Slash. However, the Incineroar can just go for a Fake Out, for instance, and draw off a Shadow Ball. Trista could double protect, but Steven could capitalize, maybe even switch out one of his Pokemon to get in a different position here. And he is stalling out the Psychic Terrain turns as well, so Lele won't be able to do too much damage without that Psychic Terrain once the Psychic Terrain is gone. And Trista taking a lot of time here. This is an important turn. You got to figure out what you need to do.
Yeah, Steven did not bring his only Tapu, his only way of switching the terrains. Of course, Trista, I was just about to mention how she also has Coco in the back, which will get rid of the Psychic Terrain, now setting up Electric Terrain for the field for every grounded Pokemon. A Protect from Lele, Flare Blitz into the Coco slot. We saw in Game 1 this did a lot, and Tapu Koko had no chance of surviving a Flare Blitz from Incineroar in the sun, taking so much recoil damage, but was so worth it for Steven as Aegis Slash will Shadow Ball this Protect, and now it's going to have to, Steven will either have to switch it out or just keep it in blade form, honestly.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate part is Steven is just a little bit off from proccing his berry, so that Incineroar is going to be a bit low into range of Earthquake. So Trista could potentially bring out her Landers here and switch out the Tapu Lele so she can reset that terrain as well as get Charizard and Landers in next to each other, and that's going to create huge offensive pressure for her. And Steven not really having that many switch-ins available. The Landers is weakened, the Incineroar is weakened and will go down to an Earthquake. So, but we're going to see the Charizard come here, probably wanting to fire off a Heat Wave, but Heat Wave might not be able to knock out the Incineroar, might have to go for an Overheat. So gonna be interesting to see what.
Yeah, and you're gonna risk that. You're gonna risk that chance of missing an overheat into Incineroar. Of course, we saw how much the first overheat did, so it would be enough for a knockout. But at the cost of sacrificing 2 stages of your special attack. Obviously, if Tapu Lele is knocked out this turn, that means Charizard wouldn't be able to switch out and reset its special attack stat. So this is a huge turn for Trista, and she will overheat. But which target is it at? It's at the Incineroar. That's gonna get the knockout. But as we were just saying, lowering Charizard's special attack harshly, lowering it 2 stages. So a potential overheat not going to do as much to Aegis Slash on following turns. Of course, Trista still does have the Sun Up, so it's kind of helping neutralize that special attack that it is losing, since it will boost the fire attacks from Charizard. Shadow Ball into Tapu Lele. Aegis Slash is still taunted as of this next turn, so it can't King Shield, and it can just eat a Heat Wave or an Overheat from the Charizard, as Trista will switch in her Landorus here, or will bring her Landorus here on these last 2 Pokemon that she has. Charizard, Landorus, what a nice combination to put together, as Steven will show or will bring his Zapdos in on this turn.
Yeah, so Overheat did lower the Charizard special attack, so the Charizard is locked in at -2, and if it decides to go for an Overheat, going to be a -4. But however, Trista still has an out. She's actually still in this game. Rock Slide is still a move that she can click. Could flinch the Zapdos, and one flinch might just be enough, because as long as she connects her Rock Slides and Heat Waves, she's going to do massive damage. And the fact is, yeah, taking damage with this Landorus might be okay, because the fact is, it might be 2 KO'd by the double Rock Slide plus Heat Wave combination. So it really comes down to this turn. Does Rock Slide flinch the Zapdos? And if it does, that's going to be absolutely huge for Trista.
Trista has to rely on a lot of things. No Overheat, actually going for the more accurate move in Heat Wave, but does less damage since it's a double target. Rock Slide is not enough for the knockout and does not get a flinch. Steven with a sigh of relief on this turn, as Zapdos activating that Tailwind, making his Pokemon faster for the next couple of turns, and now he can retaliate with a Rock Slide of his own.
Yeah, actually, the Landers does not carry Rock Slide.
Or Stone Edge, excuse me, right. But it actually goes for a critical hit knockoff. Not sure if that mattered or not. Of course, Steven might have the information for that. Probably didn't, since Landers was so low on its HP. And a Thunderbolt into Trista Charizard. Super effective. Knocks it out. Charizard going down. Steven will win this top 4 match against Trista 2-0.
Yeah, so very nice set from both players, and I think a lot closer, even though Steven might have looked like probably had the better position for most of the game because Trista's Pokemon were weakened. That end game really just came down to, did Landers get a flinch or maybe even a crit? If one crit happened from either the Landers or Charizard, would have been able to knock out the Zapdos. So
right, because Zapdos wouldn't have got Tailwind off.
So it would have been absolutely huge there. Knock out the Zapdos would have probably just secured the game because of the fact you could just go for a Heat Wave again and Rock Slide again, and even probably just knock out the Landers there because it already took the chip damage from switching in, and then Aegislash is going to be low to whether Charizard or Landers can just knock it out the following turn. So yeah, absolutely really close game right there. It looked like Trista was in a pretty bad spot, but had that chance to come through. However, Steven able to get that Tailwind up, and that Tailwind pretty much just secured the game.
Yeah, and I want to point out what we said at the beginning of the set for these two trainers was Gardevoir heavily threatened by Charizard and Mega Charizard and Mega Metagross. So how was Gardevoir going to stack up against Trista's Pokemon? And the answer was you just don't bring it because the Steven didn't need his Gardevoir because it was so hurt from those Mega Pokemon that it was a great adjustment. A lot of players really struggle with deciding not to bring their Mega Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever felt that in a match where you're like, oh, but it gets those boosts to its stats. It's my one Mega Pokemon. It's like not bringing a Z move in my 4 Pokemon. Like, and we saw Chris Danzo in top 8, Steven Mia here in top 4, deciding that it's Pokemon that gets all those boosted stats is not necessary sometimes.
Yeah, Mega Evolutions, especially with the nerfs, there were some big changes from Generation 6 to Generation 7. A lot of the Mega Pokemon tend to got nerfed, actually. Kangaskhan with Parental Bond, which we saw earlier. We saw basically the
Pixelate, Aerolate, yep.
Salamence, Gardevoir getting hit pretty hard. The only Mega Evolutions that didn't really get changed were Charizard, which we saw Trista, Metagross, which actually probably got buffed.
Got buffed, yeah.
That you got that new Stomping Tantrum toy that.
And the speed tier changed with the Mega Evolution.
Yes, that's absolutely huge. As well as Mega Mawile that hasn't changed. Probably the only few Mega Evolutions that haven't changed. But otherwise, a lot of the big Megas that were pretty defining in 2015 were probably Gardevoir and Kangaskhan and Salamence, just putting on a lot of pressure with their damage output, but their damage output being reduced makes them less valuable to players, and a lot of players are learning that maybe these Mega Evolutions aren't exactly worth it anymore, and that some of the non-Mega evolved Pokemon can do a lot of work in this format.
All right, so we're going to have a heck of a finals here for you. Go and shout it from the mountaintops. Call your mom, ask what she's doing. Tell her to stop because we have Steven Mia and Paul Chu in the finals. Say, Mom, what are you doing? Head over to Twitch. Set her up with a Twitch account. She doesn't know how to use it. And we will be right back with a very exciting finals for the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown.